television series designed for everyone who has ever gazed skywards and dreamt of slipping the bonds of Earth. The Aviators.
This week on The Aviators, we take a look at the ins and outs of light sport aviation. We check out Xeon portable collision avoidance systems. We talk to Women in Aviation founder Patty Shabrian.
So they say, oh yeah, there are a lot of other women out there doing this.
And we see if a non-pilot can land an airliner.
I don't think there are any odds. I think it's 100% I'm going to not land this aircraft.
From the Boundary Bay Airport, this is The Aviators.
Light sport is one of the fastest growing segments of aviation today. People love them because not only are they easy to use, easy to fly, but they're also really cost effective and amazing on gas. They max out at 1,320 pounds, 120 knots of airspeed, and you can get them on floats, you can get them on wheels, you can even get amphibious ones that look just like boats. They are an excellent alternative for aviation enthusiasts.
In 2004, the FAA created the light sport aircraft category. Since that time, it's been embraced by manufacturers, with major brands such as Cessna and Piper producing aircraft that meet LSA requirements. The Aviator's Sarah Rapenda caught up with Greg Ellsworth from the Light Aircraft Manufacturers Association. Greg gave us some insight into why light sports are so popular.
Greg, tell me a little bit about light sport and why it's so popular right now.
Well, I think they're brand new airplanes. And they have a lot of interesting new features available to them. In other words, first of all, it's a brand new two-place airplane. And it's got some real interesting things with the pilot licensing on it. And there's a lot of people that are maybe worried about flying later on in life, and maybe their medical not working and stuff. As long as they have a valid driver's license and have a pilot's license or a light sport license, they're able to fly these airplanes.
What makes a light sport aircraft a light sport aircraft?
Well, that's a specific category, and that category has some weight limitations and some speed limitations, and mostly it's a 1,320-pound aircraft. We're looking at this new Piper one right here. There's also amphibious airplanes or ones that have floats on them as well. Either way, they fit into a category which gives you a little more weight. It's up to 1,430 pounds. They can't go over that, and they have a max speed rating of 122. So they have to stay in that. And basically, these are travel airplanes. You can go a long ways. They're faster than the old Cessna 150s were.
Unlike the ultralight class, which requires no pilot's licensing in the U.S., light sport aircraft require either a regular pilot's license or a sport pilot license to fly. Pilots who hold a sport pilot license are restricted to flying during daylight hours only and are limited to certain airspace and altitudes. But the advantage of light sports versus ultralights is the ability to carry a passenger. According to Greg, this is one of the reasons the class was developed.
I think the history came out of the ultralight movement, where we were trying to fix the two-place thing that was never available in ultralights. Started off with some committees, and ERAC committee was around. They were trying to fix the two-place exemptions and stuff so we could do some flight training in them. So we got together and we worked out the standard and came up with a light sport category. And now there are, I think, 105 of these registered as light sports, special light sports, which means they're factory built. And you can buy them and fly, get your license and take it off and go flying. You don't have to build it. There are some available kits that are experimental light sports, but these are fully factory-built airplanes. This is the first time this has ever been done in aviation in the United States, or maybe in the world.
Light sport aircraft run the gamut of all sorts of designs, and it's not hard for a pilot to find the right one for them.
This is another great example of light sport aircraft. It's also amphibious, but it's on floats. The weight rises from 1,320 to 1,430 to allow for the extra weight of the floats. Cruises along at about 90 miles an hour, seats too comfortably, and the beautiful thing about an amphibious aircraft is that not only can you land it on a lake for your cottage and fishing needs, but you can also land it at your local airport for routine maintenance.
The extra weight available for amphibious light sports has spurred a number of amphibious designs, including small flying boats such as the Sea Ray.
This is the Sea Ray LSX, and it is a great example of amphibious light sport. You cruise along at about 80 to 90 miles per hour, and it sips at gas at only 5.5 gallons per hour and about 4.5 hours of range. But the really interesting feature of this aircraft is the folding wings. It's regularly at about 30 feet, but you fold them up and they're at 10 feet. You can store it in your hangar or in the garage if you want to.
Sea Ray is not the only company embracing this style of amphibious light sport aircraft. The Icon A5 was designed to bring the freedom, fun, and adventure back into aviation. With a large input from the automotive industry, the A5 is targeted as a way for the average consumer to get into aviation. According to former F-16 pilot and Icon founder Kirk Hawkins, the creation of the light sport class is what made this possible.
This aircraft was designed from the very beginning by some of the best aircraft engineers together with some of the best auto engineers and designers in the world to try to create the first true, pure, consumer-focused sport recreational flying vehicle. The reason that we can do that today is because there's two big changes by the FAA in the U.S., and that is, one, the creation of light sport aircraft category, and two, the sport pilot license, which allows almost anybody to fly now safely with adequate training for about half the time and half the cost previously. So about 2 or 3 weeks of training, $3,000 or $4,000, and anyone who's ever dreamed of flying now has safe access to that market. And that's sort of where we come from, and this is the product that we think can inspire people to actually get out and do that.
Light sport is a U.S. regulation. Most other countries have similar regulations known as either ultralight or microlight. For those interested in this sort of aircraft, be sure to check with your local regulator. Regardless of where you are in the world, the FAA's light sport classification has resulted in a whole lot of new, fun, and exciting aircraft. With thousands of new pilots taking to the air every year, the skies are steadily becoming more crowded. The majority of these flights fall into the realm of general aviation, meaning they are neither scheduled airline nor military flights. Most general aviation pilots are flying under VFR, or visual flight rules. This means the pilot has to be able to look out the window and see clearly where they're going. It also means that they have to be able to see other aircraft. Portable collision avoidance systems, or PCAS, are designed to assist pilots in avoiding other aircraft, working either in conjunction with a pilot's existing GPS system or as a standalone unit. Curtis caught up with Xeon Flight Systems Vice President Kevin Van Drunen to chat about the origins and importance of their PCAS units.
And so, Kevin, I'm curious how the founders of Xeon got started in the PCAS business.
The founders were both pilots, and they had a friend that died in a mid-air collision, so that really inspired them to come up with a portable and affordable solution for general aviation.
And Xeon Flight Systems, it sounds like a very much of a homegrown technology. Where is Xeon headquartered at? Where was it developed?
Xeon Flight Systems is headquartered in Addison, Texas. We also manufacture and assemble all our products over there, and from there it's distributed to all over the world.
PCAS works by detecting signals transmitted by an aircraft's transponder. PCAS systems are passive, meaning that instead of sending an interrogation signal to other transponders itself, it simply relies on signals already being sent from ground radar and other aircraft. PCAS then translates the received signals into useful information, which it displays on the screen. Engineering technician Daniel Evans was able to explain which aircraft would be displayed by the system.
So the first question I think people will be thinking about is what kind of airplanes would be displayed on a PCAS system?
For the most part, it's going to be any airplane that is equipped with a transponder. The transponder needs to be interrogated.
And so what kind of systems would interrogate the transponder to make it visible on your PCAS?
Any kind of active system, either in a private plane, commercial airliners use active transponder interrogators, as well as ground radar, military aircraft, military bases.
So any aircraft that's visible to air traffic control would be visible to you using one of these PCAS
Absolutely.
systems?
PCAS is available in two different models, the more robust XRX and the entry-level MRX.
The MRX is our entry-level model. It shows you range and altitude of the biggest threat. It keeps track of multiple aircraft that are around you, but it always prioritizes them and gives you the biggest threat.
With our MRX, what we show you is the relative range of the target aircraft, as well as its altitude separation from you. So what you'd see, for example, in this one, you see a 0.7 miles away, so it's 0.7 of a mile away. The altitude is -6, so it's 600 feet below your aircraft. And that trend arrow indicates if he's ascending or descending, so becoming more or less of a traffic threat.
Displaying this information makes it easier for the pilot to visually identify the other aircraft. Once they know where the other airplane is, they can decide on the best action to take to avoid a collision. One of the advantages of the XRX over the MRX is that it also displays the relative direction of the nearby aircraft.
It's different because it also gives you direction that really sets it apart from the MRX and also all the competitive systems. It tracks multiple aircraft, but it will show you up to 3 aircraft, where the MRX only shows you 1, the biggest threat. Continuously prioritizes all the aircraft and shows you number 1, 2, and 3. The number 1 on the left side, the bigger display, and then the second biggest and the third biggest threat.
What you're going to see with the XRX is not only range and altitude, but azimuth. So as you see in this display right here, the primary target's 3 miles away, 2.5 miles away now. It shows it lights up 2 arrows indicating it's at a 45, and you see the altitude below it as well. It also, because it's the X-Rex, we can display 3 targets at once, meaning you get your primary and 2 secondaries. As you see here, you have one as a primary, a secondary is 3 miles away, 1,400 feet above you.
With modern moving map systems, general aviation pilots are able to get a top-down view of where they are and where they're going. When integrated with a PCAS XRX, pilots are also able to see other aircraft displayed directly on the map.
For the most part, what you're going to see is a standard symbology with altitude above or below the unit. You're going to see an altitude either plus or minus, as well as its actual location on the map. So in this example, what you see is a target that's 400 feet above you, 200 feet above you, closing in on your location. As it becomes more of a traffic threat, it enters a traffic warning area. For the Garmin, it's 2 miles, 700 feet. And it becomes a threat, and you'll see a pop-up warning window to let you know you need to pay attention to that aircraft because it is too close.
Flying is a great way to get out and enjoy the Earth, but it has to be done safely. Systems like PCAS assist the pilot in flying safer, but the final controls are still in human hands, and it's up to the pilot to ensure that they stay safe. The Aviators was surprised to learn that current FAA estimates show that of the 750,000 active pilots across North America, only 6% are women. Starting with a simple annual conference, Women in Aviation was founded with the objective of increasing this number. Our own woman in aviation, Sarah Rapenda, sat down recently with the founder of Women in Aviation, Dr. Peggy Beatty-Shabrian.
So Women in Aviation, it's big and it's growing fast. Can you tell me how it started?
Women in Aviation actually did things kind of backwards. A lot of times you have an organization that forms and decide to have an annual meeting or conference at some point, but we actually started as an annual conference. In fact, it was March 1990, Women's History Month. We had the first Women in Aviation conference in Prescott, Arizona, and had about 150 people show up, and we thought that was a great turnout. So the second conference was in St. Louis with about 250 people, and after about 5 years, we had grown to 500 attendees, and people were starting to ask, well, I come to this conference and I meet a lot of great people and network, but how do I join the organization? Well, I don't know, because there wasn't an organization. But that was the impetus to put together, it's a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We now have over 8,000 members. At our convention this year, we had 3,000 people, so it's been wonderful to watch it grow. You could go to a lot of aviation conventions, particularly back in the 90s, and there weren't very many women there. So to come to a convention that was like the opposite, you had like 90% women and 10% men, it was an affirmation, if you will, for the women who were in aviation to come to this event and say, oh yeah, there are a lot of other women out there doing this, even though maybe in their day-to-day life or aviation connection, they didn't see very many others.
At the heart of Women in Aviation are the annual conferences. Taking place in a different city each year, these conferences bring together more than 3,000 women and men with a passion for flying. The conferences feature high-energy presentations, a trade show, and a bevy of male and female speakers.
So the convention is a big part, then, of your organization. What can a person expect when they go to one of these?
There's a lot of spirit of enthusiasm and energy. One of the compliments we receive from our exhibitors every year is, a lot of times at a show, by the end of the afternoon or end of the last day, there's hardly anyone in the halls. Our exhibit hall is full all the time. When the doors are open, our folks are in there. We bring in industry leaders. We've had some wonderful speakers. At our convention, we've had FAA administrators, men and women. We have some astronauts, including Peggy Whitson, who was the first woman to be the commander of the space station. And these women are always willing to share, particularly with the young people, you know, some suggestions, ideas, how they can reach their goals and their dreams in aviation.
You have a lot of influential women involved in the industry that are a part of this organization. Is there one person that you can think of off the top of your head that's contributed a huge amount?
I hate to name just one, but maybe I'll give you two, and they're very prominent in terms of not just the aviation community, but the general public, and that would be two air show performers that come to mind right away. Patty Wagstaff, who's National Aerobatic Champion, World Aerobatic Performer. She's been involved with us almost since the very beginning, has given lots of presentations and has helped us actually get the organization going. And Julie Clark, who's another well-known air show performer and been very supportive of our organization and participating in a lot of our events and outreach programs.
The organization offers a number of programs designed to assist women in becoming involved in or advancing within the aviation community. This includes programs for commercial and recreational pilots, as well as related fields such as air traffic control and aircraft maintenance. One of the most successful of these initiatives has been their scholarship program.
Well, one of the things we wanted to do was to help young people who wanted to go into an aviation career, and what better way to do that was maybe through a scholarship program. The next year, in 1996, the convention was going to be held in Minneapolis. Northwest Airlines was going to be a major host and sponsor for the event, but they came up to us and they said, we saw that you started a scholarship program and we'd like to be a part of that. We'd like to help. And I thought, well, great, maybe they'll donate another $1,000 or something. They gave away a type rating. Any airplane that they flew, we announced it to our membership. President of the Northwest Airlines Simulator Division stood up and announced the winner. He said, well, young lady, you've won the scholarship. Which airplane do you want to fly? Came right back, 747. So that certainly was a big boost to our scholarship program in terms of the dollar amount. This year we awarded 83 different scholarships that totaled $687,000, and total to date we've awarded $6.5 million in scholarships. That's probably our biggest success story.
Women in Aviation goes beyond scholarships and conferences. It's really about uniting people with a passion for flying. For Peggy, this passion was ignited during a simple ride around the airport in a small two-seat airplane.
You're the founder and the president of Women in Aviation, and you must fly yourself. Tell us about some of your personal experiences of flight.
Well, I started out in college as an elementary ed major. I was going to teach elementary school. In the summer between my junior and senior year in college, I was working at a restaurant, and one of the customers who came in on a regular basis was a very enthusiastic pilot and airplane owner. He was always inviting people to come out to the airport and go for an airplane flight. And I wasn't too sure about this. I was 21 years old, never been to an airport on any kind of an airplane, airline, or small airplane, but took him up on it one Saturday, went out to the airport in Collegedale, Tennessee. Took off, and I'll always remember that very first flight as the airplane lifted off of the ground and looking down over the airport and the trees and then the houses. And he did what he promised. He flew around the airport and he looked over and he said, well, I said, keep flying. This is great. I like this. So we flew maybe a half an hour that day and went out to the airport a couple weeks later, went for another flight, and then started taking flying lessons and just was so enthralled with flight. And I think part of it, too, was the challenge, getting pilot certificates and ratings, and went on to instrument and changed my college degree when going into aviation, and never really looked back. I've always enjoyed flying. The people in aviation, I think, is the other part of what's made all this worthwhile. The flying is certainly an exciting part of it, but also the people that are associated with aviation.
Over the past few weeks, the Aviators has taken you inside the Embraer 190 simulator. Professional pilot Jeff Lewis has shown you how to land an airline. We've also seen what happens when a private pilot takes over on a flight gone terribly wrong. This week, in our final segment in the simulator, we see if a non-pilot can land an aircraft. The Aviators' cameraman, Devin Lund, makes his living filming aircraft, so he's no stranger to a cockpit.
My previous flying experience is filming other people flying.
But he's never actually flown an aircraft himself.
I don't think there are any odds. I think it's 100% I'm going to not land this aircraft.
Despite Devin's lack of confidence, he knows his way around well enough to get settled and get ATC on the line.
Hello, air traffic control. I'm a cameraman. Apparently, everyone on the aircraft is unable to fly, and I am the last resort. Over.
Okay, we copy. Pilots are incapacitated, and you're flying the aircraft. Do you have any flying experience whatsoever?
I have zero flying experience.
Well, you're not too far away from the airport, but this might get interesting. We're going to do our best to talk you in. So if you look in front of you, on the screen, you should see on the right side.
After getting a quick tutorial on the Embraer's primary flight display, Devin at least knows what he's looking at. Lucky for him, the aircraft is not too far out. He can see the Houston airport, and it's just a matter of bringing the plane around to land. This does mean that he has to disconnect the autopilot and hand fly the aircraft.
See, there's a red disconnect switch on your yoke to disengage the autopilot. Press that button twice, and you're going to be hand flying the airplane.
Okay, roger.
Okay, disengage it. Autopilot. You're now hand flying. Autopilot. And try to keep your altitude at 3,500 feet, okay? Hit the disconnect switch again to get rid of the noise. So the basics of flying an airplane is just like a car when you turn. So you turn the wheel to the left, the airplane goes left. Turn it to the right, the airplane goes right. To adjust your altitude, your pitch, you pull back on the yoke, that makes the nose go up, and you push forward, it makes it go down, okay?
Devin's doing pretty good. He's getting a handle for the basics of the aircraft, and ATC is confident he'll be able to get the plane on the ground. His big advantage is that no one is really expecting him to actually pull this off. And he's sitting in a flight simulator planted firmly on the ground. In fact, Devin almost seems to be having fun.
Whoa, we're going up. Is that...
No, you want to push the nose down there.
Yeah, okay.
Try to hold your altitude. If you see in the middle of your primary flight display, there's a donut with two lines that looks like a little airplane.
And that's what I should aim for?
The little airplane is where your airplane's going. So you should try to keep that on the white line between the brown and the blue.
The pink one or the green one?
No, the green one.
Oh, okay.
So continue your turn to the left to heading 150.
Okay. Oh, this is kind of like a video game.
It might seem like a video game, but Devin still has a virtual airplane to land that's behaving exactly like the real thing. Engineers have spent millions in developing something that is identical to the actual experience of being 6,000 feet in the sky. He's almost on final. ATC has had him set his flaps and the landing gear is down. If he can just make this final turn without losing control and spiraling into the ground.
A little bit, start going down.
Yeah, okay.
And bring it to the left to line up with the runway, okay?
Okay.
So that's good right there.
We're at 140 now, so...
Yeah, so bring your power back a little bit.
I guess as we're going down a little in altitude, we're going to be gaining speed, so
that's
keep
right.
Leveling off on the power here, huh?
That's correct.
He's on final, and Devin is having to make dozens of small adjustments to his speed and heading. It's a careful balance, and the computer and ATC are quick to tell him when he's made a mistake.
Pull up.
Too low, terrain.
If he gets too slow, the plane will stall and fall out of the sky. If he comes in too fast, he'll land further down the runway and overrun the available stopping distance.
So we're still at 130. How fast should I be going?
Your speed is good.
Okay. Those trees look tall.
Yeah, you don't want to hit them.
Okay.
Finally, this is the moment of truth. He's a little low and to the right. If he digs the right wing in, the plane will cartwheel with catastrophic consequences. Can a cameraman with no flight training land an airplane in Houston, Texas?
Okay. Shall I decrease my speed now?
Yep. Bring your power back to 0.
20.
Okay.
10.
He's done a great job landing, but the problem is the plane is hurtling down the runway at 150 miles an hour, and Devin can't find the brake pedals. When all else fails, there's always the handbrake.
Pull it.
Okay. Hey, I'm alive. Oh my God.
The plane is on the ground and 100 lives have been saved. Indicators show that he has blown a couple of tires on his main landing gear, but that's a small price to pay.
Pretty proud of myself, actually. I thought I was not going to be able to pull that off, but somehow I did, thanks to ATC. I'm alive.
Airline Captain Jeff Lewis has some final thoughts on the landings made by the novices.
Overall, I was pretty impressed with both guys. Obviously, for Anthony, it represents a new step in technology, and the hardest part is absorbing all the information that's presented to you on the flight display screens here and analyzing what's going on with the aircraft. For Devin, this was a completely new experience, and I had to really talk him down, but I think the turning point was when Devin said, "Hey, this is just like a video game." And then it went really well. Up until that point, I was a little pessimistic, but congrats to both guys. Job well done, and the airplane's in one piece on both landings, but overall, everyone would have walked away from both of these landings.
The Aviators, for everyone who has ever gazed skywards.
For more information on today's segments, visit www.theaviators.tv.